Welcome, Wargamers. Today is going to be a fun one because we're going to be crafting a mighty champion with the Anvil of Apotheosis, along with some original creative thinking. Hopefully it's original, I don't know. This is something I've wanted to do since the Anvil of Apotheosis was released in the General's Handbook 2020, and the reason I wanted to start with the character we're going to be talking about today is a few reasons. You see, the character we're going to be building today is Gulgaz Stoneklaw. Now, I just learned about the character of Stoneklaw from one of the latest, lore videos where he went ballistic. Okay, this is the one, Stoneklaw's Choice, where the Hallowed Knights stole his quarry, his prey, which was the Megakin of Nurgle. He is a bone splitter orc who has a skull on each shoulder that talks to him. One kind of talks more with the voice of Gork, the other one with the voice of Mork, and they all debate together about the best way to go about leading his war clan. And he's such a fun and unique character, even though there's not really a lot of information about him. And so we will review what we know real fast, and then we'll start building this character up. This is intended to be a strictly narrative character. I can't honestly say that enough, but honestly, with a lot of the Anvil of Apotheosis creations outside of specific factions, none of them are going to be like super OP or anything like that, so it's going to be fun. So Gulgaz, as I said, is the leader of a Bone Splitters war clan known as the Gut Stompas. I call it a Bone Splitters war clan because it says that's what he is, but the actual war clan itself is full of ogres and grots and all kinds of stuff, to be honest with you. He is a Bone Splitter big boss, which of course there is a model for. And when I say, Bone Splitter War Clan, he's the boss, there's a lot of contention about that kind of stuff. You can read this short story, Malign Portents, called Head to Head, which kind of depicts his little background. He's also been featured in Firestorm and Age of Sigmar, the Path to Glory book, I believe. Maybe it's Path to Glory or it's Skirmish. I'm not sure which one, but one of those smaller supplements he was mentioned as well. And the idea being here is you can really build whatever army you want around him and it works. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of buffs to focus on. But Stoneklaw has one defining, unique thing about him, right? And that's his lieutenants, as I said before. On each shoulder is the skull of a former lieutenant or someone below him, and maybe just another big boss, or it could be a foe that he conquered, like a different warband that he conquered. One speaks the truths of Gork, which is more the fighty, brutal side, and one speaks the truths of Mork, who's the more cunning and crafty side. And the constant battle going on between these guys in his head, between these voices, is so fun to read. Again, go check out the Malign Portents story, Head to Head, right? That's definitely something you want to include when you're talking about building a character out of nothing. And so let's start making this guy. First, let's compare the actual Big Boss War Scroll kind of as a template, right? We're basically using it as a template and get the more bland stuff out of the way with the Anvil of Apotheosis. So having a look at him, I'm really just looking at this to get a good sense of his stat line, right? I'm not going to be using any of his abilities or command abilities. They're all Bone Splitters focused, and we know that Stoneklaw, has a very mixed army, right? So he would want something that affects more units. So let's use the Anvil Apotheosis to essentially recreate his profile, or close to it. And so this is the profile I came up with. Obviously the Bone Splitters profile with its basic stats and that kind of thing is already made. As for a weapon, I went with the Greatsword, an eager to two-handed thing, something that he can get in and be choppy with. For archetypes, this is kind of where you choose, is your guy a supporting character, a fighty hero, or a wizard, or something like that. I went with the Commander archetype. He is the leader of a massive melee-focused warband, and his job as the leader is to constantly be seeking something to smash, destroy, and he has to be seen doing these things to keep the respect and the prestige enough to stay in charge, so that no one questions him, right? If he were to lead from the back, all the orcs would be like, "What's wrong with you?" and kill him immediately. And you could go nuts on the enhancements and abilities, but a bog standard big boss is 90 points, and I wanted to keep it something around there, right? Maybe go a little bit more, but I don't want to have a 400 point, mega hero on foot just screaming. The Anvil Apotheosis suggests 10 points for every destiny point, which is the currency you use to build the characters, spent. And so we're going to go through some of the Anvil of Apotheosis enhancements we have for this guy. So let's talk about Frenzy. Frenzy is a great one. On a hit roll of 6, and on a modified 1, of course, it becomes 2 hits. Okay, and that's a fantastic one simply because he wants to get in there and be as killy as humanly possible. So unmodified hits to 6 become 2 hits. I love it. I also went ahead and put on Inspiring because no matter what units he's leading, they think he has been communing directly with Gorka Morka. And that's awesome. And that's something I wanted to capture of the reason a big boss who is typically not the leader of any Bone Splitter war clan, why would he be in charge? Well, of course, everyone's in awe of this communion he has with Gork and Mork respectively on each shoulder. And so I wanted something like that was army-wide. Like, if he's near them, they get the bonus from it of a sense of reverence or respect. Having him around makes them feel more comfortable. Now, I wanted to do one more that is minor but super flavorful, and it's not in the Anvil of Apotheosis. It is the heads on his shoulders. One belongs to Mork, one belongs to Gork, constantly bickering about what to do in that moment. And Stoneklaw is constantly making decisions based on their suggestions. And so the rule that I created is called Listening to Wisdom. At the start of the combat phase, Gulgaz Stoneklaw must choose to listen to the voice of Gork or the voice of Mork. Apply the following abilities until the end effects of the combat. Choose one of the following abilities, and it affects Stoneklaw until the end of that combat phase. So if you choose the voice of Gork, right, he listens to one head over the other, reroll hit rolls of 1 and wound rolls of 1 in the combat phase. Now, that's not super scary given the stat line and that kind of stuff we have. Of course, it does magnify the frenzy. 6s to hit become 2 hits. You could roll a 1, re-roll it into a 6. That kind of stuff is there. It just makes him a tiny bit more fighty. Reroll once is not a sweeping rule unless you're hitting and wounding on a 2-up. I think it's totally fine. Now the other one, Voice of Mork, who's the more sneaky and crafty one, enemy units attacking this model must re-roll 6s to hit in the combat phase. So it makes him a little more dodgy, and I like that a little bit because Bone Splitters are basically just naked hooligans running at you. Having that little bit of defense of which voice he's listening to, whether I'm going to be the aggressor or I need to work around my opponent's aggression and use it against him and that kind of stuff. That to me, I like it. They're minor things. They're great rules to have for a hero specifically, but the big boss, because of his literal base size, because of his points, because of his weapon, he isn't this amazing powerhouse. He's not going to be sweeping through the army. He's not described in any way like Korgus Kull, where he's just like a one-man wrecking crew. He's just an orc who's not right in the head and managed to become a leader of a tribe. And that's really, really interesting to me. Now, of course, with that rule that I made, I'm trying to pull in the duality into his character, right? He can listen to either voice, be fighty or be dodgy. If you are concerned that maybe he just doesn't have enough, what I'm going to say is oomph to get into the battle and make a meaningful difference, feel free to bump up his attacks to match the original War Scroll. I wouldn't object to that. After all, it's what he's based on, and there's no weapon profile quite like that in the Anvil of Apotheosis, but since we've kind of kept him very tame in terms of his ability and how he interacts with the army, I think that wouldn't be a problem to give him personally a couple more attacks. So on his basic profile, he has 6. I don't think that would be a big deal, but that's up to you and your opponent. Now, if you are wondering how I actually made the picture that you are looking at here, I went over to a site called RuneBrush, and I'll leave the link in the description down below. I don't know anything about who runs it and that kind of stuff. I just thought it was a really cool tool, and I wanted to share it with folks. And all of a sudden, boom, here he is. Now, when it comes to modeling your own Gulgaz Stoneklaw, there's a lot of ways you can go. Of course, you can change his weapon loadout. I just did this based on the big boss, but nothing says he can't be wielding something else. Again, none of those stories that mention him are necessarily depicting the model that Games Workshop sells. I mean, it is in terms of like his rank in the army, I guess you could say, but it's not saying he is a man that's running forward with a two-handed axe or something like that. You can give him whatever weapon you think would be appropriate. What would be a weapon that both Mork and Gork would agree upon? And that could be whatever you want it to be. I would definitely still have him be a bone splitter though, and then I think that's the real defining feature that we want to explore is the skull on either shoulder. You can do something cool with his tattoos, because again, he is a bone splitter, and those are very meaningful to the bone splitters as a faction. Very, very important tattoos to them. But maybe one side of his body is, the tattoos are red and the other side are blue or purple, something to represent Mork. And so you can have one character that everything about him, from the skulls to the tattoos to what he's wielding, are all meant to really represent this duality. Again, this is the thing that makes him inspiring and gives him authority within his war clan. Makes him a presence. This duality, everyone is looking to see which side, the Mork side, Gork side, the red, the blue, you know what I mean? All that kind of stuff, however you want to divvy him up, all of that, they're always waiting with bated breath. Which side are we going to follow? What's the plan? Hey, Gulgaz, what are we doing? And I like that. I want something bold, and he takes kind of like the center stage. And I will say, to be honest with you, when it comes to just like pure model stuff, I flippin' love the pose of the big boss, where he just looks wild and savage, and he looks like a guy who was mad about something stealing his kill, which if you watched the Stoneklaw's Choice video is exactly what happened in that story. So friends, this is a short video. I just wanted to talk very briefly about some ideas I had for creating heroes. Now, when the Anvil Apotheosis was first dropped, there was a lot of people being like, oh, let's see how I can break this, doing the Mr. Burns, fingers tapping thing. But the truth of the matter is, it is a phenomenal resource to build very, very tame and understandable characters that tell a narrative. Okay, of course, yes, you can take the system to its extreme, but honestly, for the vast majority of armies, the bonuses that are listed here are not crazy. Some armies, they are. I cannot argue that at all. But the truth of the matter is, most of the heroes that I've been able to create here are perfectly reasonable for, like, say, my Maggotkin army, or for Beasts of Chaos, or all those kinds of things where, or in this one in specific, like, I would have no problem if Games Workshop dropped this War Scroll. I'd be like, oh, cool, they got another hero. they got a named Bone Splitter guy. Cool. And that's pretty much the only reaction I would have. So I think it's awesome. I would love to know your thoughts. Looking at the Anvil Apotheosis within your General's Handbook, what are some of the maybe enhancements or abilities that you think would go a long way to representing Gulgaz Stoneklaw? So are there any ones that I missed? A mount is never mentioned in the stories to my knowledge, but there's no reason he couldn't have one, I suppose. And I just want to hear your guys' thoughts about bringing a character from one of these little lore blurbs that we know little about and making him walk the field of the mortal realms in an army. So leave your thoughts in the description down below. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. It means the world to me. And I'll catch you next time in an Age of Sigmar lore video. Thank you so much. Happy wargaming. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was made possible by the folks over here to the left. These are my top supporters over here on YouTube and on Patreon that keep this channel going. If you'd like to learn more about how to become a supporter and get some cool things in the process, like exclusive pictures and interactions with me, and get your questions answered here on the channel, go ahead and click any of the links down below or the join button on the community page over on YouTube. Regardless of your choice, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me with this video, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Happy wargaming.